Picture this: a caveman walking across the savannah with a huge belly, sweating through his animal hide clothes, and complaining that nothing fits anymore. Sounds ridiculous, right? We usually imagine ancient humans as lean, muscular hunters who spent every day chasing animals and surviving in the wild. But here's the question: could an ancient human actually become obese? Not just slightly overweight, but genuinely obese. The answer is far more surprising than most people think. Let's travel back around 300,000 years, when anatomically modern humans first appeared. There were no farms, no supermarkets, no fast food, certainly no food delivery apps. People survived by hunting, gathering, fishing, and scavenging whatever they could find. Food was never guaranteed. Every calorie mattered because every meal could be your last before several days without food. Finding berries meant walking for hours through dangerous terrain. Hunting often failed, and even a successful hunt had to be shared with the entire group. Because of this, most people assume obesity was impossible. For the overwhelming majority of ancient humans, that's almost true. But almost is the important word. Here's something many people don't realize. Your body was never designed to stop you from getting fat. It was designed to stop you from starving. From evolution's perspective, carrying a little extra body fat wasn't dangerous. Starvation was. Anyone who could store extra energy during times of plenty had a much better chance of surviving periods of famine. This idea became known as the Thrifty Gene Hypothesis, first proposed by geneticist James Neal. The theory suggests that our ancestors experienced constant cycles of feast and famine. Sometimes they found honey, large animals, or seasonal fruits in abundance. Other times they went days with very little food. Those who stored fat more efficiently survived longer and had more children. Over thousands of generations, those fat-storing abilities became part of human biology. In other words, your body is incredibly good at storing energy because your ancestors survived by doing exactly that. But having the ability to store fat doesn't automatically mean ancient humans were obese. Obesity requires two things. First, a body capable of storing fat. Second, an environment with a consistent surplus of calories. For most prehistoric humans, that second condition almost never existed. Think of it like owning a sports car but driving only on narrow dirt roads. The capability is there, but the opportunity rarely is. Still, nature gives us interesting clues. Many animals today build up huge fat reserves whenever food becomes plentiful. Bears gain enormous weight before hibernation. Migratory birds nearly double their body weight before flying thousands of miles. Even chimpanzees store extra fat during seasons when fruit is abundant. Humans evolved under the same basic rule. When food is available, eat as much as possible because tomorrow it might disappear. There's another reason fat became so valuable. The human brain is incredibly expensive to run. Although it makes up only about 2% of body weight, it consumes roughly 20% of the body's resting energy. Some scientists believe our large brains and our ability to store fat evolved together. Body fat acted like a backup battery, ensuring enough energy was available even during food shortages. Human babies provide another clue. Compared with other primates, they're born with much higher body fat percentages, helping fuel their rapidly developing brains. So, the very biology that allowed humans to become intelligent also made us remarkably good at storing fat. Now let's look at the evidence. Not every hunter-gatherer lived in the same environment. Some groups survived in deserts, others in forests, frozen tundras, fertile river valleys, or along rich coastlines. In a few places, food wasn't scarce at all. Communities living beside massive salmon runs or rich shellfish beds had reliable food year after year. Archaeological discoveries suggest some of these groups even stored food, built semi-permanent settlements, and developed complex social systems long before agriculture appeared. When food became that reliable, it became biologically possible for at least some individuals to gain significant body fat. The strongest clues come from one of humanity's oldest artworks, the famous Venus figurines. These small statues, carved over 25,000 years ago across Europe, consistently depict women with large hips, full thighs, rounded bellies, and prominent breasts. No one knows exactly what these figures represented. They may have symbolized fertility, beauty, motherhood, or something entirely different. But one fact is difficult to ignore. So artists usually create what they have seen. These body shapes almost certainly existed somewhere within ancient human populations, suggesting that fuller-bodied individuals were real enough to inspire artwork thousands of years before recorded history. There's also evidence beyond art. Skeletal remains from certain coastal and river-based communities show signs of a much richer diet than typical hunter-gatherer groups. Bone density, tooth wear patterns, and even isotopic analysis of ancient remains sometimes point to diets consistently high in fat and protein, far beyond what a typical nomadic group would have accessed. Some anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer societies, such as certain Arctic populations who rely heavily on whale and seal blubber, have observed something fascinating. In these groups, food surplus during successful hunting seasons is enormous, and some individuals genuinely do carry more body fat than we might expect from the lean caveman stereotype. If this happens today, there's little reason to assume ancient humans living in similarly food-rich environments were any different. Then there's the question of social status. In many hunter-gatherer societies, both ancient and modern, having extra body fat wasn't seen as a health problem. It was often viewed as a sign of success, fertility, or access to resources. Leaders, elders, or individuals within thriving communities may have had more consistent access to food, giving them a biological and social advantage that showed up quite literally on their bodies. It's also worth remembering that obesity, as we define it today, is a relatively modern medical classification. Ancient humans weren't measuring BMI or worrying about waistlines, but biologically speaking, the same excess fat storage that we now label as obesity could absolutely have existed in isolated pockets of ancient populations, especially in places where food scarcity simply wasn't part of daily life. So while the popular image of the ancient human is almost always lean, muscular, and constantly on the move, that picture only tells part of the story. It reflects the majority experience, shaped by scarcity and physical demand, but not the full range of human biological possibility. Environment, not evolution, was often the limiting factor. So maybe the image of the caveman with a big belly isn't as ridiculous as it first sounds. It just wasn't the norm. It was the exception. Most ancient humans stayed lean not because their bodies refused to store fat, but because their world rarely gave them the chance to store enough of it. The moment food became abundant and reliable, even for a small group in one corner of the world, the same biology we carry today was ready to respond exactly the way it does now. In other words, our ancestors weren't lean by choice. They were lean by circumstance. And that single truth changes the way we should think about our own bodies today.